commercial work is all about the return on investment, period. We would get change order requests in commercial, and basically the owner's looking at the numbers, hey, I want to upgrade the tile, I want to redo the lobby, whatever it may be. And he would turn to his rental team and go, can we get more rent if we do this? And they'd say, no. And he'd turn and say, no, we're not upgrading the tile. It was that simple. Those decisions were all made based on the ROI. Obviously, residential was a completely new world. Now it was, we need to match the paint in my daughter's room to match the duvet cover. You're like, really? And we'll find that color for you.
And it
was so emotional. All the decisions were now emotional.
Welcome to the Small Business Safari, where I help guide you to avoid those traps, pitfalls, and dangers that lurk when navigating the wild world of small business ownership. I'll share those gold nuggets of information and invite guests to help accelerate your ascent up that mountaintop of success. It's a jungle out there, and I want to help you traverse to the levels of owning your own business that can get you bogged down and distract you from achieving your own personal and professional goals. So strap in, adventure team, and let's take a ride through the safari and get you to the mountaintop. Hey, Adventure Team, it's Chris, and we're excited to have Duane C. Barney on today. I had a chance to talk with Duane. We had connected through LinkedIn, which is a great networking site, but had a chance to talk to Duane about his experience before, and then we kicked it around and told some great remodeling war stories. But Duane's on today, and he's been at this for 30 years, working in residential construction. He's done it all, from putting his hands on the tools to making it all happen, getting into project management, and then even running his own business. DC Builds is the construction management and consulting business he has today. He started in the DC area, but now he lives up in the Northeast in Connecticut and runs DC Builds and loves to help other people who are looking to get into the construction business do it a little bit better. And I can't wait to ask him. One of the best questions is he's looking to become an author and where he is in his process, because as you know, I did it, and man, that was a pain in the ass.
You did. You wrote a book.
That's right. I brought it up already. That's pretty early in this. Yeah. And I'm supposed to be plugging him. How am I doing? All right. With that, Alan, cheers.
Cheers. Great to see you.
Great to see you, and great to see you, Duane. Welcome to the Safari Small Business Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to it all week.
All right.
I have a question. I want to know, how does a gator end up in Connecticut?
Well, it's two parts of that story. One, I married a Florida State Seminole who was from Connecticut. So I have slowly worked my way up the East Coast back to Connecticut. So started out in Minnesota. So this is as close to the cold weather as I could get back to.
That's awesome. So you can tell from his accent, he does sound a little bit from the Minnesota area. So I can turn on my "Yeah, you betcha."
There you go. I'll recognize that.
Yeah, you betcha. But you're right.
Yeah, you betcha.
So Duane, let's start a little bit about not just where you are today, but let's talk about how you actually got into the business to begin with. We talked about you getting into it, going down to Florida, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit about how you actually got into the construction business to begin with?
Well, you mentioned the 30 years. I've stopped even saying the 30 years. I have been in construction my entire life, and that way people can guess how long that's really been, because 30 years is beginning to date me. But I did start out literally working with my grandfather down in Florida doing a development, and then entered the University of Florida and got a degree in building construction, and jumped into the commercial world in Washington, D.C. after that. There was a commercial crash in 1990, and I've been in residential construction ever since, continuing to work my way back up the East Coast.
What was the favorite time or favorite thing you did that got you into construction in that 18, 19-year-old age? What did you really like doing the most?
Climbing the rafters, setting trusses, walking the top of the walls. There was so much reward at the end of a day after framing. You could stand back with a cold beer. Everybody would just, admire all the work we had gotten done, all the accomplishments we had made. And it was so rewarding.
So would you still climb up a rafter today?
Yeah, I still do. Yeah. It's still way too much fun.
Oh, that's good, because I got myself stuck on a roof about 8 years ago, and I'm done. So I let all my guys do everything. I can get up and down a ladder, but that's enough for me. So I've had it. But
You
at
were
18 or
literally
19,
stuck.
I froze, bro.
Yeah, no,
I was
I've
on
done
top.
that.
I did the slip on the shingles, and I couldn't move. It took me like 30 minutes. I started pounding on the roof to get my helper to come up, and he thought I was just driving more siding in. So I was up there for 30 minutes, and I finally said, "All right, it's time to do the old turn around and scoot your butt down move." So yeah, I've learned my lesson on that one. I let my guys do all that stuff, but that's good to hear. But you hit on that great point. One of the best things about being in construction is you get to see what you did. You get to be that artist that goes, man, that looks really cool. And a lot of people don't get to see that in any businesses they're in. So you move on, you go to construction. Did you stay you went into the commercial world, or did you do residential while you were doing that?
I started out of college. I went into commercial. I did that for about 5 years, doing mid-rise office buildings, 18 stories, that type of stuff. 18 was the tallest. Down in the commercial, or down in the DC market, in the suburbs mainly.
So did you?
And it was a lot of fun. I learned so much. It was core and shell work. I didn't get into the tenant work, so it was, structural steel, elevators, windows, precast concrete. Really fun stuff
on the tools. Were you actually working on them, or were you?
I was on the site, but I was a field engineer, so I was doing building layout. Making sure that the precast was in alignment with the steel structure, the windows went where they belonged, all that kind of stuff, quality control.
Can you imagine?
And overseeing the subcontractors.
Frozen 18 stories up, Chris.
I think 18 stories up wouldn't be here today.
And I'm not making fun of you, because I got stuck on a roof putting up Christmas lights one year, and I had to wait for my wife to wonder where. I'm like, how long is it going to be before my wife actually is wondering where I am?
That could be a long time.
Yeah, it was tough.
It's early in my marriage. She's still
it's a test. Yeah. It's been 3 days. She hasn't missed me yet. I don't know.
So that first job out of college, you're actually doing the project management stuff, doing that. What made that exciting for you, or what made you say, you know what, I'm liking where I'm at?
The most exciting thing for me in the commercial part of it was you would work on these projects, for a year and a half, sometimes 2 years, putting together the structure, the elevators, all these core elements that were going in. And what I really enjoyed was when we started turning things on. We started turning on the alarm systems. We started turning the elevator systems on. Mechanical systems would start going on. The building would start to hum and come alive. And it really felt exciting for me just to get that feeling that this was a working, functioning building. It wasn't just a structure. And to start seeing all those elements come together, and really, you get into commercial alarm systems, and it was really interesting to learn how all of these are tied together and how they all work together. And
we hear it again.
That just excited me for some reason, just feeling that building to come alive.
You could tell in the passion that you had. And I was getting excited with you. I'm never thought I'd be so excited to hear an alarm system coming on. Usually I'm excited for the other reason, like, oh my God, what have I just done? But I love that. So obviously you like seeing that stuff, and you can see the trend here, like seeing things get accomplished and things get done. That's just incredible stuff. So you continue along that path, but then something happened. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, in the 90s, there was a commercial crash economically, and basically all the tower cranes in the DC market came down. And we were just literally running out of work, waiting on that, economic cycle to flush through. And a buddy of mine had started his own remodeling company and asked me to join him. And I was like, that does sound like a lot of fun. Let's give it a shot. And that's when I jumped into remodeling.
Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, because this is stuff I love to hear. You do commercial, and now you're working with people and their homes.
There's
people
in commercial too.
No, I don't consider that.
No, they're not people. No,
right.
No, it's contracts in commercial.
Right. So tell me what the difference for you is between a commercial work that you were doing and you jump into remodeling. What was those big aha moments when you first got involved?
Commercial work is all about the return on investment, period. We would get change order requests in commercial, and basically the owner's looking at the numbers, hey, I want to upgrade the tile, I want to redo the lobby, whatever it may be. And he would turn to his rental team and go, can we get more rent if we do this? And they'd say, no. And he'd turn and say, no, we're not upgrading the tile. It was that simple. Those decisions were all made based on the ROI. Obviously, residential was a completely new world. Now it was, we need to match the paint in my daughter's room to match the duvet cover. You're like, really? And we'll find that color for you.
And it
was so emotional. All the decisions were now emotional. And a lot of the dollar questions, I mean, obviously everybody's got a budget, dollars came into play, but the decisions were based on emotions. My daughter wants this, my wife wants this, we got to figure out how to make this happen. And unfortunately, I would get trapped into that, and I would start trying to find the financial way to make their dream happen, which can be a business death knell.
I was going to go somewhere else, but you fit this. We got to go down that path. It is hard when you stand in front of somebody and they say, match that paint up to my daughter's duvet cover. So you grab the duvet cover, you put it in your truck, you drive all over 25 different places. This is before you could get good match paint like you can today.
Right.
You get the paint, you bring it back, you put it on the wall, and she goes, maybe something else. Okay, let me go out and do it again. And you just got done wasting 6, maybe 8 hours that day running around doing it. And you're right. You're not making any money doing that, man.
No. And yeah, try putting that on a change order's billable hours. It doesn't fly. And unfortunately for me, I did it because I needed to do it, but I didn't care. I didn't have a passion. I didn't have the same passion for that paint color she did.
Yeah. One of the things you hit on, I would bring up even more is you worked in commercial contracts. What was that contract size? Just average dollar size of that contract?
The biggest I did was 45 million. Back in, that was, 45 million in about 87.
So 45 million in 87. Then you go up in the middle 90s, you're doing a remodeling job. What was the average size of your first year remodel jobs you were doing?
10,000 would have been a good job.
So there you go. 10,000. You're like, and you're giving me grief over telling you you got to spend another $200. Oh yeah, no. And then they turn to you and say, I'm sure you heard this. I'm spending a lot of money with you, Duane, and you have
right.
to go get that paint. You're
right.
Like, I just got done doing an $85 million project, and you're busting my balls for a $10,000 job.
Right.
But it's that passion. So as you get into it, tell me how you started to embrace it, and tell everybody how you started to embrace it and you loved it even more.
Well, I did. Again, like I said, I love the framing part of it. Eventually, I learned how to do trim carpentry. I was lousy at that in the very beginning, because in my world, everything could be done in one day. If I just propped enough stuff up against it, that glue would eventually dry 3 days later, and I could start sanding today if I just clamped it, and I could start sand. I was terrible at trim carpentry, but learning how to do trim carpentry really taught me a lot of patience. Once I figured out that sometimes you need to let the glue dry, walk away and come back to it tomorrow, it calmed me down. It taught me a lot about how to be a better trim carpenter, and ultimately how to just kind of live my life at a little slower pace.
So you do the trim carpentry, you're in remodeling, you're in the 90s, you're kicking it around DC. And if you don't know the DC suburbs, I know a little bit about them. I know that it's a hotbed for remodeling, so you can do really well there, especially if you're good at what you do, and clearly you were. So as you progressed, that $10,000 job in the beginning, what did you get up to in size? Did you start to scale team, and did you start to scale job size?
Yes, I did both. I was doing custom homes at 300,000 plus out in the Gaithersburg suburbs. I had 2 full-time project managers and a full-time designer on staff. And we were rocking it out I think we reached just under 3 million a year at one point.
Solid. That was probably right after 2000, right in that area.
Right, just before 2000, late 90s, right in that .com boom. It was a great time to be in DC. You could just throw a hammer and hit a project. It was unbelievable.
So at that point, you got more into the management of it. Did you start to transition off the tools? Were you still the punch out guy? Were you still the trim guy for your company?
No, at that point, I had gotten off the tools completely. My time on the job site was scheduled, every Thursday I did the job site tour. went around to the jobs, talked to my people. I usually talk to everybody once a day, but on site, I had put the tools aside. There wasn't enough time. Mentally I was still there, but I was just physically out of time.
Talk a little bit about the transition you went through from getting off the tools and giving somebody or empowering your project manager and actually having to step away from being on site. How did that work for you? Did it come naturally, or was it something you had to work at?
For me, a lot of it came naturally because I had come from the commercial world and I had done project management on the commercial end of it, where we didn't even have our own employees doing any work with the tools on. It was all subcontracted. So I knew how to manage a construction project, a construction company, all with subcontracts. So that didn't scare me that much, but I did miss the physical end of the day reward of getting stuff done. It wasn't as rewarding saying, yeah, I made it through that stack of invoices. So that passion was really hard to build in the business for me again, because I did enjoy being out there with the tool belt on and making, just hanging out with the guys some days. And it just wasn't as rewarding. It wasn't as much fun sending out invoices, coding bills, doing estimates.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. I left that corporate America gig, started getting on the tools, and I put myself in a handyman. I bought 2 vans, put myself in a van, then hired a guy, and then eventually I became the estimator, but also the quality assurance and the scheduler, and then eventually I got a scheduler, and eventually I got a quality assurance, and then I was just the sales guy, and then now I've got sales guys, and now I'm not in the field at all, really. I'm in the training business, and it's not as rewarding. We just had training this morning, and I said the best thing you guys get is at the end of the day, the customer says, "Wow, that looks really good. Thank you so much." And I miss,
well, without a doubt. Those customers don't understand. Those are like the best words ever.
They are. Yeah, it's actually, I said this morning, I said, that's as good as a $25 tip. And one of the other guys says, well, I like both. I'm like, you're right. You get both. So I love that. So you built it in, you got the 2 project managers, you're clipping off 3 million, you're in remodeling, you're in DC, and you progressed. Now you're at that height where you're doing pretty well. What happened next?
Well, that's when the fun started. I like to blame it on 3 customers who decided I didn't need my final check. There was kind of a game going on in DC among the higher end clientele to see if they could keep that final check from their builder, because we all know builders make a ton of money. They don't need that final check. So this was kind of a game going on. And I found that out because my wife went to a dinner party where they were all talking about how much money did they get their contractor for. My wife came home and she was like, is this real? I'm like, apparently it is. As a result of that, the company crashed right out from underneath me. I managed to pull off 2 more jobs after that, paid off my bills, and eventually moved up to Connecticut. I like to say those 3 jobs were the ones that killed me. After 10 to 15 years of blaming that situation, I really learned my markups weren't right. I did not have my numbers right. I should have been able to withstand that. I should have had the resources to deal with that and to take them to court or fight them or do whatever I needed to do. But I just simply wasn't making enough money to be able to stand my ground. And so when it happened, it just hit me like a bulldozer, and that was the end of it.
Well, that's I would want to dig into this a little bit more, because you just obviously today you're helping other guys not get into that same situation you find yourself in. But when you were there,
exactly
dealing with it, and you're in the heat of the moment, you didn't see it coming, and it's just started to happen one by one. So you go back to that a little bit and talk about, this week it went like this, and then next week, and then I was sure I was going to get my money, and then I knocked on the door, and then maybe I even put a lien. Tell us how you kind of got there, and then eventually you said, "Oh my God, I'm done. I'm out."
It sounds like you've been there before, because it's exactly how it goes. You knock on that door. I had one of the customers basically said, as soon as we sell our house, we'll go ahead and catch up on our bills. I'm like, I can't fund the rest of the construction. I need to stop. They're like, well, we don't even have money to pay you for the last invoice. But again, as soon as we sell our other house, we'll take care of you. I'm like, so there was no knocking on that door. They literally ran out of money and had my last check. I had another customer who just every time I went to pick up the check, in the envelope was another 15-item punch list
instead of
the check.
Ouch.
So I would, apparently you're not happy. I went out and did the list, and we did this for like 3 months. The last time it happened, I just put the list in my pocket, got in my car, and drove off. I was like, this really is never going to happen.
Wow.
And I can't afford to keep fixing things. And it just, he was an attorney. So either I was going to have to hire one, he was going to defend himself. And I realized I was never going to see that check. And it was terribly painful. I had a lot of bills with the local lumber yards. I had, payroll I had to cover. And, that's the times when you walk around and you go, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I probably repeated that to myself 10 times a day.
Yeah.
And I stripped the company all bare bones. I got down to like one good superintendent that could help me out. And we signed up 2 more jobs. And we got them done. We made some good money and started paying off the bills.
So you stood behind your debts. You took care of everything. You made sure you made your payroll. You paid the people you needed to. That's another big thing that's really hard to do when your back's up against the wall. So that's another big thing. He's dropped 2 things I think that are really important for everybody to take away. One is know your margins in the beginning, because you ought to be able to withstand. When I first started, I remember a guy telling me he was in the carpet cleaning business. He goes, yeah, I just refunded the money in the beginning. I'm like, I don't have the money to refund, dude. I got nothing.
Right.
I don't know how you do that. He goes, well, you better start thinking about it. So change your margins. Wouldn't say I was the best at it. Al and I have joked about this on podcasts quite a bit. I didn't know what margin was clearly in the beginning, even after coming out of banking. But eventually you do that. You have to be able to withstand that if you want to get through this. And yes, I've been at that door. I've driven halfway across Atlanta, knocked on the door and said, you owe me $4,000 just out of principle and integrity. Not that I couldn't afford it. I still don't think I could, but I did. And guess who still doesn't have that money? And guess who's driving over to the other side of Atlanta tomorrow? That's me. So you did your thing, you stood thing. And that's the other thing I think a big takeaway is, even if somebody's not treating you right, you treat everybody else right, because that's the only way we can put our head in the pillow every night as a contractor.
Right. And that's, I don't think I'm unique in that position at all. Every contractor I've ever met, every builder that's out there, especially every remodeler, hearts of gold. I mean, these guys will just work their way to the end no matter what. And they will do whatever they can to get a project done, even if it costs them money. They'll do it to their detriment. And it somehow comes with this industry that you just don't walk away. You finish the job, you get it done. And even if you just finish, you finish it well, because you're proud of your work. There's a certain level of pride there. And I don't think that's uniquely me. I think that's part of the industry. And it's also one of the challenges the guys have in running a business. They're committed to that quality and that workmanship and what's going on in the field, and to focus on invoices and payroll and all that other garbage, what I call the unseen work in the back office. It doesn't have the same enjoyment. Much rather go out and hang out with the guys in the field than I would code invoices.
You were saying when those 3 jobs happened, you wished you'd built more margin into it. How did you teach yourself how to build a little bit more margin and still stay competitive in the bidding process?
Well, that took me many years to learn. From that experience, I went to work with 2 large builders here in the Connecticut market. And when I say large builders, the average home size at that point, we were doing about $8 million was like the average home.
Wow.
So fun work, really fun work in the residential world. The biggest I did was 27 million.
That's one job, one house.
Yeah.
You can tell where I have grown up and where I've lived, because I thought that was a whole city.
Yeah. You thought you were a big deal.
No, one job, one house, $1,000 a square foot. So
wow.
yeah. So and I learned a lot working with those builders. Again, they worked at a different margin because of the size of their project. After the '08 crash, I started my business over again. That was a whole other fun story. And I knew I had learned my lesson on margins for the most part. So I raised my margins when I started my new business, and I kept studying my numbers and realized I still wasn't there. So I just kept moving them up. 5%, another 10%. I was like, I'll find the limit here someplace. I'm just going to keep tweaking this and see what happens. And I became very comfortable with it. And my numbers, just running the business became easier. There was money left over in the bank. It was like, hey, I need a check. Hey, no problem. That was a much nicer feeling. Not, hey, who do we need to invoice this week?
So do you feel like you were underpricing those jobs in the past just because you didn't know any better, or because you didn't think you would get the jobs if you priced them higher?
Both. Part of it was I didn't know. I came from the commercial world where, it was commercials 10 and 5. So, that's 15% markup. So I'm in the residential world. I know I can get better. So I'm thinking, what's better? 20, 25 markup? Well, that sounds like a pretty good number. But I never really had I had good books, but I didn't have a good understanding of the numbers. Just really didn't evaluate it on a full spectrum. And it just felt like it seemed like a lot of money. It seemed like good markup. And I was under the impression, rightly or wrongly, that that's what everybody else was doing. So if I was going to get that work, I couldn't raise my prices. And in those days, it was still very much the architect's world, where all of the jobs started with the architect and they had their favorite builders, and it was 3 competitive bids. And that's how everything was done. And I really didn't see it. I was just going to price myself out of work if I raised my prices at all. And in hindsight, that it was honestly stupid, because if I couldn't make a living and if I couldn't make a profit and I couldn't run a business, then the decision should have been, should I just find a new business and get out, or do I raise my prices? Because if it's unsustainable, what am I doing it for?
I think what I heard, and I completely agree, is that the market can bear a certain margin and you got to figure out what it is. But sometimes you compete against yourself and you margin yourself down thinking, if I do that, they're not going to like it. One of the things I wanted to hit on is, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I have a remodeling arm in my company. I just got done hammering my project managers on this. I'm like, when you look at 2021, we were on new 22. I said, you look at our projects. Here's the people that said we were awesome. And here was the job margins we had on it. Here's the people that said, I want to talk to the owner because I'm pissed. And here's the job margins on those. Guess what it looked like? Highest job margin, highest client satisfaction. Lowest job margin, lowest client satisfaction. So that's been my experience. I don't know what you think, Duane, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Without a doubt. And learning to filter out those customers before you sign the contract is huge. And it's terribly challenging. And one of my worst mistakes was at the end of my last company. These folks, wonderful folks, were doing some modern work on their home. Very complicated stuff, very detailed stuff I really loved. They were on a tight budget, and I knew from day one that they were a pain. Like, I was like, this, I actually walked away from the job the first time. I said, I can't work with these people. I shouldn't work with these people. I got to walk away. I walked away. 3 months later, they called me back and said, Duane, we really want to work with you. And I stepped right in it. And I took the job, and it was a nightmare from that point forward. And I talked to one of the other local builders. And I said, Dan, did you ever talk to these folks? He goes, oh, yeah, I talked to them. I doubled my number because I didn't want anything to do with them. I was like, yeah, I wasn't that smart. So no matter how many times we try it, at least for me, I get emotionally caught in these things and I get sucked into the project. It just looked like such a fun challenge.
Yeah. I've been
We
there.
can find a challenge, but we need to find fun challenges that make us money.
Right. It's amazing how often we've done that. And even though I sit back and I get to quarterback my guys, it's also better for me because I can be dispassionate about it because I'm not in front of them. Because
right,
I hammer those guys. I'm like, keep your margins up. Keep your margins up. Let's go. And then I go see a customer and I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just throw that in. And I did that with my remodeling manager looked at me and said, what are you doing? I said, God, I suck. I'm so soft, man. Don't ever let me get in front of that customer again, because she just had this way. She was nice and she's just, oh, shucks. And you're like, oh, okay, we'll just do it. I'm like, oh man, I should have charged. But you hit on that. You know, to run a good business, you got to have good margins. You got to know your numbers. It's so hard because that's the humdrum, mundane, I hate it stuff. When it's a lot more fun to be out there, like you said a number of times already, it's better to be out there with the guys doing it. So you're up in Connecticut, you're doing all that now. So you're still building and also helping other people get into the contracting business or help them with their own?
I have closed down my remodeling company now. I kept it open. I actually let my license go a couple of months ago. I am now full-time consulting and helping other builders on the business side of their business.
Is that a decision that you made? Like, I'm going to go ahead and give my 30 years of knowledge to other people, or did it actually come about organically where people were asking you for your help?
A little bit of both. I've always wanted to help the industry in more than just renovating a bathroom or another kitchen or a deck. As I said, the people in the industry are great people. And they're so passionate about the work and doing the work and the quality of the work that they really don't ever focus like they should on their business, and their businesses fail. I mean, I've heard the story so many times. You know, I started my own business. I worked at it and I worked at it and it just didn't work out. I don't know what happened. Well, they were busy working. They never built a business. They never had a structure. They never had processes. They never focused on the business. They just, you know, they went and bought some business cards and then put the tool belt back on and went back out and did what they were really good at. And then they wondered why the business failed. And it's painful. I mean, I watched my business fail the first time, and this was one of some of the darkest years of my life. It was just brutally painful. It was hard to get up every day. And I really wanted to help as many of these folks as I can on the business side, so they have more time. And once they have more time, if they want to go hang out in the field or they want to go fishing, whatever they want to do, that's fine. But they've got to get that business structure set up. So I wanted to do that. And I had other people coming to me going, can you help me? So between my passion for helping people and other people approaching me, I'm like, I'm really kind of burned out on doing another powder room or another kitchen. And I far more enjoy doing this and helping others with their business. So I'm just going to start doing that and see if I can make a go of this.
That's great. How long have you been at the consulting business now?
I've been at it about 5 years at certain scales. Depending on how busy my construction work was, I did less consulting. So I kind of floated in and out of it until now, where I've let my license go and I'm focused 100% on it.
Yeah, that's a big thing. You know, you talked about the business part of this, and it's so big because I think as human beings, one of the things we do is we run away from pain, right? We don't want to be in pain. And what's painful? Sometimes what's pain is sitting in the office, with those invoices put in,
right?
QuickBooks, working in the chart of accounts, making sure payroll happens, make sure you made your payroll taxes right, all that stuff that's like, oh my God, let me poke my eye out. Well, all right, you know what? Screw this. I'm just going to go out there and estimate and sell stuff. I want to talk to somebody about a bathroom. I still have a passion of talking to people about bathrooms. Let's go do something fun. So I'll run away from the pain and I'll hope it'll go away. But
right.
Wayne's mentioned, and that's where you need that coach.
It gets bigger.
Does it really?
Yeah. It kind of mutates, magnifies.
It looks like it's like that Gremlins movie, right? It just starts. It's like somebody poured water on the damn thing. You come back on Friday afternoon, everybody's sitting at your door going, "Where's my check? Where's my check?" And you're like, "Oh God." So I've been there with that, but I've also had to, build the process. But it sounds like, Duane, you've hit on a thing that it's hard for us as business owners. So when you engage with a contractor and they're working with them, what do you do first? Obviously, you go in there, you do an assessment, but how do you structure them to help them see their own blind spots or see what they've got to do?
Well, the hardest thing is to really get the mindset into the fact that building a business is a thing. And I try to convey building a business as into building a spec home. You're actually building something that could be sold. Now, you may keep it, move into it, and live there for 20 years. But it is a thing. Your business is a thing. It's not just activities that swirl around you. To really make that happen, for the most part, you've got to have a plan to put the tools down. Now, you may have them on in the first years, nature of the business, nature of, being an entrepreneur. You're wearing all the hats, but you need a plan to get out of that. And the first thing I help guys focus on is on the accounting side. Get your books right. Now, part of that probably has to do with the fact that I didn't understand my books. But the other part of it is accounting is the scorecard of your business. If you need a way to measure your business, that's your measurement tool. And you need good books. You need to know if you're successful. And if you're not successful, you're going to have to change a few plays at halftime.
Of course, I can go down the sports analogies all day long.
Oh, good. I like those too.
But I remember going in. I'm on the board of our local charity here called NARI, which is the North American Remodeling Industry, and I think Duane's been part of it as well.
Yep.
They brought me in because they said, "Hey, Chris, you came from the banking industry. You have a very successful business. Of course, they're all looking from the outside in. But we have a problem with our chart of accounts. Can you come in and help us with our finances?" So I get in there and I dig into the local chapter's finances, and I look and I'm like, "Man, these books are a mess. What's going on? This is crazy." And I'm like, first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the chart of accounts so we can actually have line of sight in our business. And I am laying all my best flipping lines, brother.
You're throwing some terminology out.
Oh, I was knocking them down, taking them out. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, Chris, you're really good. And I went back, started looking at my old books, totally screwed. I was like, oh my God, I haven't even looked at my own books. So I went on a year path to get my own books fixed up. And this is after being in business for 10 years, where everybody goes, "Oh, Chris, you're wildly successful." And I'm from the outside looking in. Sure, I am, right? You got 25 guys running around doing everything. But when I started looking at it, I'm like, holy crap, I didn't really know my numbers. I was missing a few things, and what was happening in purchase materials were running and rapping on me, and I was missing that. So I you're right. It's not fun. It's not sexy, but I think equating it like you did, you're building a house, you're building a business. It's the same stuff.
Helping other people does make you better. I mean, you've seen it. You play golf.
Yep.
And you take somebody out who doesn't play and you're just kind of giving them some pointers. And next thing you know, you're like, "Oh, I don't even do that." And, you're holding the wrist cock and all of a sudden you're just banging the ball a lot better just because you're helping somebody else out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So like I said, I could go down the business now, the sports analogies all day long. I found that one thing in my company is that not many guys enjoy sports as much as I do. So I've had to holster my sports analogies here at the office with a lot of my guys. I've got a few of them are interested, but not as many. So you get them in, you get them helping building their business. Let's go back to working with these guys. What have you seen as the biggest blind spot for them after accounting? Where's the biggest resistance for them? They get their business built, they get their time back, but there's that, oops, now you're still doing this. Why are you doing that?
I would say probably the biggest blind spot as you progress through the business is that they need to start stepping back, and their actual role as the owner to manage the processes. That none of these processes should be yours. Your ultimate goal, and I had this conversation yesterday with a local contractor here in Connecticut. I said, you want to get every process so somebody else could do it. Now, you may still do some of them, but it should be doable by somebody else. Once you get to that point, you have a business that you can sell. It now has true value. It can run on its own, which means somebody else could step in and run it. It may be a new vision. It may be slightly new direction. It's their business now, but it functions on its own. And that's what you're working to achieve. And that degree of separation from what was their baby, it's like sending your kids off to college. you can't follow them. Like at some point, they've got to go live out on their own. They can't keep living in the basement. And it's hard to let go, just like your own kids. You raised them from birth, and now you got to figure out what to do with them.
You want me to ask? All right, I'm in. I just asked. It sounds like you said it a number of times. You're talking about that exit strategy idea. How do you think about getting out of your business? Are you finding a lot of these guys are looking to get out of the business? And the reason I was looking at Alan is he's worked with people who try to work on beginning their business with the end in mind of exit. Do you find that these guys, when you start to talk with them, have that vision of exit, or is that something they haven't even thought about yet?
Most haven't thought about it. More are starting to think about it. And I'm hearing about more remodeling and construction companies being sold. Most think it can't be sold. Who would ever want this? And honestly, the way they have it set up, most people don't want it. They don't, what are you buying? Everybody's like, I just work my way out of work. What are they buying from me? Well, one, they want to see your books. If you don't have good books, if you don't have a good scorecard, and you can show I make money on a regular basis, and I have regular customers calling me, may not be repeat customers, but I've got a good name out there. And I'm paying myself X and I'm making Y, and I'm putting money away each year, and I've got a vacation home. That's what you're selling. You're selling that profitable business concept. But that's what you've got to build. And that's what you've got to be able to demonstrate on that scorecard that is your accounting system.
Talk about
and so more guys are starting to see that and see that there could be a retirement path in their future that involves selling the business.
Talk about maybe somebody you've worked with. How long does it take them? So if somebody listening to this podcast goes, you know what? Haven't thought about exiting my business. I knew I should have, but I'm thinking about it now. About how long do you think it would take to really sell a remodeling business of size? Let's say today they're doing between 2 and 5 million. Hypothetically, of course. No, I'm kidding.
The sale's going to depend on the market and what's going on. I mean, you hit the right person, you could sell that, in 6 to 12 months. Part of that's going to have to do with how well your business is set up. It's kind of like just selling a home. You got to get it cleaned out. You got to get the clutter out of there. You got to get it decorated so it shows well and it presents well, and you can see what's involved in the business and how it makes money. And I like sports analogies, but I also like house analogies because we're in the business, and there's so much about building a house that equates to building a business and selling a business or running a business.
It's a great analogy. So, what possessed you to start writing a book? I happen to know somebody else who wrote a book, and that was quite a process.
Yeah, I want to get into this too. All right.
Oh, the book. Yeah, the book thing. I've always thought it would be interesting. I have tons of thoughts. I can sit around and talk all day long. I thought, well, I should try to write this all down in a book, which I am not good at, and I don't find the time to do it. So I found a ghostwriter, which actually really saved me. And that was a lot of fun because it was like an ongoing interview. Once a week, we would talk, and then he'd go back and type or do whatever he did and kind of interpret it. And I would read it, and then we'd have another meeting and talk. And that's kind of the stage we're at. The full final drafts are done. We need final editing before we're ready to go into publishing. And he had some personal problems that he needed to deal with in his life, and we are now stalled. So I am right there. I am right. And no.
Brother, I can tell you, I have been right there, right now, almost. To use your exact lines, and that was exactly a year ago today, published my book, From the Zoo to the Wild. I thought I had a ton of ideas. I put them all down on paper. But what I started to realize was that my ton of ideas went a lot like my ton of ideas do. And they're all over the board, man. So I had to use somebody to help me organize my thoughts as well. And it was great. But it was painful. I remember I was getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning to read the drafts, to do all that before I could get after the rest of my day, which was, oh, that's right, running a business.
Right.
But I've been very proud of doing it. And I'm sure you're going to have that same pride as well. So we're looking forward to it. Do you have a name yet, or are you still holding that back?
I pondered a name when we got stalled. I kind of just stalled myself on the name of the book. The general premise of the book is I worked on a project where I was the expert witness, which really gave me a unique insight into the construction process. And these poor folks, school teachers, were building a family home for themselves and her parents. And the entire project went south. Contractor lives in Vermont, someplace in the woods. Nobody can find him. And I mean, every horror story you could imagine about construction happened to these folks. That's the story I tell. And then I explain why it fell apart and how they should have approached it differently so they didn't end up where they ended up. I mean, the bank overpaid the draws. I mean, you name it, it happened. The architect wasn't an architect. He was an interior designer. They got so emotional into the project that they made bad decisions and they didn't treat it like a business. And that's the one thing I try to explain in the book is this is a major business. It's like, treat it like you're starting a small business. If you're going to build your own custom house, treat it like you're starting a small business. Okay. All of the same elements apply.
So you're actually, your target market is somebody who's thinking about building their own home, not necessarily the contractor.
Correct. Yeah. This book is aimed towards the homeowner, how to approach the remodeling project or how to approach a new home project and what they need to be considering and what their role and responsibility in it is. A lot of people look at the responsibility. They go, oh, I hired an architect. I hired a contractor. I'm done. I just need to write checks. Well, the homeowner is the boss of this company. It's their company. It's their decisions. You can't just hand this off to the architect and the contractor.
You got to project manage it.
Right. You've got to run your own business. You still got to run your business.
That sounds like a great book.
That's a great angle.
I do like the angle too. And I definitely, when we get the information on it, I'll definitely get there because it's funny, as I said, I'm an avid book reader. And Michael, who works with me as an intern, looked at me and said, really, you read books? Whoa, dude. He goes, no, I mean, when do you find the time? I'm like, oh, it's on Audible, bro.
I'm on Audible. Strike me as a reader.
Audible. Audible is, I just downloaded another one on Audible last night. It's so convenient.
They say that you can read 50 books a year on Audible if you only listen for 30 minutes a day at 1.2 speed. Think about that for a minute. 50 books a year. So yes, I do read books because I wrote one and so is Duane. Here we go. But always look to expand it, but you're right. In terms of true reading, it's hard to do, but we'll definitely get that pumped out. As we wrap up, and we've got to wrap up here, and our time's coming to an end, I want to ask the three questions we always ask, and I've loved this conversation so far, so I'm really looking forward to hearing these answers. So the first question I got, Duane, for you is, what is your favorite feature of your house?
Well, the favorite feature of my house is a little side feature that I added, and it's actually a result of one of my construction projects. I've got a small 2-person sauna down in the basement that I have converted into a mini gym inside as a result. I use it every single day. It's a fantastic way for me to relax, to work out, and it's my time. And I say it's a part of a little side project. I had a customer who bought a house, wanted it renovated, and the prior owner had left this thing in the basement. He didn't know what it was. He figured it out over time. He didn't want it. He needed a new footing to support the house. It was a change order. I said, oh, what? I'll trade you the change order for the sauna. He's like, get it out of here. And I've used it ever since. I probably would have never bought it for myself to start with. But I truly enjoy it. It's a great way to escape.
All right, that's awesome. I love the sauna. And I love how he said it too, because the true way to say it's not sauna, it's sauna.
Sauna.
That's right. I love it. All right.
You got to have a little Finlander in there to get it right.
Yeah. I did it, up in the UP. Yeah, you betcha. We used to go in the sauna. Then we'd run outside, jump in the snowbank, and then run back inside, go back in the sauna, and then keep drinking beer. Because the one thing you're doing the whole time is sweating it all out.
There you go.
Healthy.
Yeah. It's a healthy, because it's a healthy January. All right. Let me ask your biggest customer service pet peeve is?
Customer service pet peeve. I hate the line, the customer is always right. Mm-hmm. That one, I understand the premise. I get it. Customer's always right. We all say it. But why do they hire a professional remodeler or a painter or a roofer if the customer's right? If they know how to do it, then do it. the contractor's right. They've got the skill set. They know what to do. And as professionals, we need to stand up for that. Too many times we collapse and go, well, that's the way the customer wanted it. We're the ones that end up eating that problem because we know it's not right. We know it's never going to work. And yet off we go, pleasing the customer.
I am in that church with you, and I'm right behind you in that pew, brother, because that is such a big one, is that the customer's not always right. But you hit on one of the key things I talk about a lot in our industry is that we have to be professionals. We have to be the person that says, I know you want to do that, but if you do that, you're not going to be able to open your door into your kitchen. No,
Right.
no, it doesn't work. Well, I've seen it will work. And so those questions, you got to put your customers first and be that expert and put yourself in that professional position, which so many of us don't know how to do that. So
I had a superintendent friend who used to just turn to the customers and go, well, in my 40 years in construction, we've never done it that way. But we could try it your way this time.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to ask you this one because I'm sure you've got a lot of contractor or DIY nightmare stories, but why don't you give us one of your best construction or DIY nightmare stories?
Well, I did think about this one, and you're right. If you've been in this industry any period of time, it comes with stories. If we could just get those down into a coffee table book, it'd be a bestseller.
There you go.
But the one for me that stands out is the one I did to myself, because as we know, we're in the business, so we work on our own homes. I was early on in my career, recently married, and my wife and I were talking about doing a major addition on the house. And then she gave me a call and said, we're having a child. And the race was on. Who could finish first? I had 9 months to design, build, and finish the addition on my house, which was a 75% house remodel. It was kitchen, master bath, master bedroom, the whole thing. I was like, really? I did this to myself? Pretty much made it. We had kitchen cabinets when the child was born. We had plywood countertops. The fun part was when, at 7.5 months, she went into bed rest. We really didn't even have a bedroom at that point. I had half the house torn up. There was no windows on the back. There's no air conditioning, and she's locked at home on bed rest. But that's a challenge. It was a fun challenge, but it was a mistake. Shouldn't have ever put myself in that position.
Let's see. Pregnant wife, so she's not hormonal, right?
No.
So that's one. 9 months to do a complete design and build for yourself. So there's no pressure there. And you have to come home to it every single day and work on it and live with it. Yeah, there's no pressure, nor personal pressure on that at all.
That's a good one.
That is a great one. And that was awesome. So
yeah, no, I was wearing my tool belt at the time. So I would wear the belt all day long, throw it in the truck, drive home, pull it right back out of the truck, go back to work as late as I possibly could.
Yeah, that's a pretty good sign of pressure. Duane, thank you so much for coming on today. Before we let you go, how does everybody get a hold of you if they want to get some help with their own contracting business? How would they find you?
The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. I am there. I post a lot. If they want to learn anything about me, they can check out my prior posts and my about page on LinkedIn. I that's my home. That's the social media channel of choice is LinkedIn. And I go there because I am looking to work with builders who are business minded. So I am not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram or whatever, TikTok, whatever the other ones are. Other than that, I can always be reached at Duane at businessblueprintinc.com, which is the consulting side of my business. But anybody can DM me on LinkedIn. Find me really quick.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you said that. So it's Duane C. Barney on LinkedIn. I do know that there are a couple Duane Barneys out there, and Duane C. Barney is who it is today. Go out there and check him out if you want to learn how to run a better construction business, a better contracting business, because he's got a lot of good stories, but more importantly, a great blueprint for you to build. Thanks again, Duane, and to the Safari Podcast group. Go out there, Adventure Team, and make it a great day.
Thanks, Duane.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Small Business Safari. Don't forget to go out and rate, review, and follow me. And if you like this episode, go out and check out my other episodes, or check out my Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn for other great content. And remember, your positive attitude will help you achieve your higher altitude in the wild world of small business ownership. Until next time, make it a great day, Adventure Team.